And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather Christmas Edition. We'll be talking about the East Coast flash freeze that's coming right now. We'll be talking about the sun. And we'll be talking about Plasmascape. I'm your host Dan, aka smAsho. Let's have a look at the sun here over the past day. Christmas Eve and Christmas. And we're looking at three wavelengths here. The blue is the 335 angstroms. 193 is an orange color, and 94 is a green color. Some small solar flaring happening associated with sunspot 2794. That's this one. And we still do see an increased likelihood of some solar flares, possibly some relatively minor coronal mass ejection activity. And the 10.7 centimeter radio flux now at 87. There's the 1 year chart of the output of the outer solar corona's radio output. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux, which is a proxy for sunspot number. It's directly proportional. And there you can see cycle 24 and the beginning of cycle 25. And we're just a year, or just a little over a year, into cycle 25, about 13 months in. And here's the current progression of sunspot 2794 and 2795. And we see these opposite polarities here, South Pole and North Pole, with 2795 making it a beta class sunspot group. And they're fairly well organized. We'll show you close-ups of the fields and more before we complete the video. And we've got some great HelioViewer movies as always. First, Comet Erasmus. And if you go to helioviewer.org, you'll find Comet Erasmus right up here. Anyway, it's up there on the LASCO C3. I don't know why it doesn't let me zoom, but there's a close-up of it. And next we'll show you the red and green and red, 94 and 304 angstrom full disk views alone. And allow me to vanish. So there's 94 angstroms. That's your Christmas green. And you can see a little bit of flaring there from sunspot 2794. Here's your red. And those are B-class solar flares. Also some coronal holes associated with those sunspots, and one is just in the Earth-facing zone. You can even see it here in 94 angstroms. We'll show you a more defined view toward the end of the video. And next, let's talk cosmology for a quick moment. Before we do that, let's talk about smAsho.com. If you haven't been there, check it out. It's got links to our social media sites on the right, up there up top underneath that arrow, as well as links to our stores. Today's featured Teespring item is the Deneb shirt, which shows you a close-up of Cygnus X3 as well as the Wolf-Rayet star Deneb. It's also the North Celestial Pole Star at the other end of the precessional cycle. And don't forget to enter the promo code smAsho to save 10% on all orders throughout the day today. And the 10% discount expires at the end of the day today. Again, Merry Christmas. Thanks to our new viewers. And we put out a bunch of content yesterday on Christmas Eve. If you haven't checked out all of those videos, we put out like 4 videos yesterday. One of them would be smAshomash.org presents the Sun Part 13, which is a bunch of close-ups of the relevant solar activity, as well as Comet Erasmus and so on, from December 7th through Christmas Eve. So check that out if you haven't. Also other playlists available there. Thanks again to our YouTube subscribers. Thanks to our patrons, the true source of funding for the content. If you'd like to help keep these videos free and publicly visible, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/smAshomash. Thanks again to our patrons. And let's get into locations of stuff in the solar system. Here's where the solar system layout is currently. And there's where things will be in a week on the first day of 2021, Year of Accountability. Have you noticed clarity this year in 2020 as we forecasted last year in 2019 that 2020 would be a year of clarity? Well, guess what? 2021 is going to be a year of accountability. Here's what's going on above my head. I like to use in-the-sky.org, face my star chart to the south, and draw in the ecliptic, which is this yellow line. And if you're up before dawn, you may see Venus. And the sun is just rising as we do the video. We are streaming live to Twitch thanks to our Twitch followers. It's twitch.tv/smAshomash. It's a great live streaming platform. They've also got a mobile app you may like to download. It will notify you when we go live on Twitch. And let's talk cosmology for a quick moment. Some interesting stuff to talk about in the realm of cosmology. And let me bring the screen share back. First thing we're going to do is we're going to pick a random number between 1 and 10, between 1 and 1031 using our quantum number generator. Today's quantum number is 284. And let's go to the Neil Gorel Swift Bat X-ray Observatory to see what that is. It's T-Pix. Once again, interesting in that this is a supernoval remnant. And we'll show you quickly what T-Pix is. We've actually featured this one before, oddly. And this is a very interesting supernoval remnant. It's got a consistent X-ray output. T-Pixitis. And there's a large image of that. It's a it is a binary system. As well as an X-ray source. And you can see this supernoval remnant shell there. If you look more closely, you can actually see the binary right there. Right there is the second star. And I won't dwell on T-Pixitis. If you want to read more about that, check out the Wikipedia article, and if you want to monitor it yourself, it's number 284 at the Neil Gorel Swift Bat X-ray Observatory, and there is the historic output of T-Pixitis, the supernoval remnant. And Merry Christmas from Smash staff and I to all of our viewers. Thanks again for tuning in. Next, I want to talk about Plasmascape. So I got a little tour of Plasmascape yesterday from regular contributor to the channel, Eugene Bagashov, who was also involved in the creation of Plasmascape. And you can go check this out yourself. There's a link to it at plasmascape.com. And I'll just give you a little tour here. If you press the A button, you'll see these tabs pop out. And these are giving you ideas of where things are moving. So, first of all, within the local chimney, the sun is moving toward, let me just zoom out here. The sun is moving in this direction. So you see that solar apex tab right there? That is the direction that the sun is moving within the local chimney. And the local chimney as a whole is moving in this direction toward Deneb. So we're at number 1 right now. If you zoom in, so here you can see that the sun is moving toward Hercules, toward this tab, the solar apex. And then the entire local chimney, which I believe is number 4, or is it 3? Or is it 5? Here we go. Here's this hourglass-shaped structure. We zoom out on that also. So that is moving toward Deneb, which is over there in the galactic plane, toward the left of the center of the galaxy, right about there. So that's the way the entire local chimney is moving, and with respect to the other stars in the local chimney, the sun is moving in this direction toward the solar apex. So you've got these different zoom levels here, and this also does show you, if you go to 1, it'll also show you the north poles of all the planets. So there you can see the sun's north pole. And again, I'll move this around to show you the direction of the total local the total motion of the local chimney, which again is toward Deneb in the Cygnus constellation. And then with respect to the local chimney, the sun is moving off in this direction to the right with respect to the motion of all the local interstellar stars. If you zoom in on any planet, you'll be able to see the North Pole will be noted on each planet with that arrow. That's the North Pole of each planet. There you can see Mercury, Earth, and Venus. So check that out if you haven't checked it out before. Best to be viewed on a desktop PC, Plasmascape.com. And that's today's cosmology segment. Let's get back to the standard issue daily space weather data right after I take a look at the live stream. And thanks for leaving us comments. Merry Christmas, precious slights. And thanks for all of the presents and trees and beers. Cheers. So here's the real-time solar wind. We've actually recently seen a slight uptick here in the solar wind density. Current levels around 8 protons per cubic centimeter, so it's actually increased here as we did show prep. And the current solar wind speed, 491 kilometers per second. The KP index at 1 over the past 6 hours. Here you should see a slight increase in the magnetohydrodynamic pressure looking at the geospace magnetosphere movies. This is the last 4 hours of data, and we show this daily as it can't be accessed in the archive. Perhaps that will change soon. It's all courtesy University of Michigan, and it's all based on the space weather modeling framework. Next, looking a little closer to home here at ground magnetic perturbations, we do see some magnetic pulses coming out of the Central Pacific Ocean there near Hawaii, as well as some changes in the Earth's B field over both north magnetic poles, the Canadian and Siberian one, and around the entire continent of Antarctica, even though the south geomagnetic pole has left the continent. We don't see any significant proton strikes here, and the solar flaring has been minor. And just bear with me one moment. It's time for me to vanish once again. And there's the 3-day chart of the GOES magnetometer. Let's get a look at what's going on in the heliospheric current sheet by looking at the Gong 2 data. So this shows you the polarity of a heliospheric current sheet. And it looks like the Earth is still pretty solidly in the South Pole current sheet, an indication that the South Solar Polar Field is quite strong, despite sunspots in the south. Next, we'll look at the coronal hole line of sight field plot, coronal hole line of sight plot. And you can see that Earth-facing coronal hole there associated with the South Solar Polar Field in red, as well as some North Pole-oriented coronal hole behavior around those sunspots. You can see a little bit of green there. Looks like it's just north of sunspot 2794 and 2795. Here's another view of the same thing. This also shows you the solar magnetogram and the solar polar fields at the poles. just going to refresh this here because I think I forgot to bring this up. I want to make sure it's the current data. Here is the coronal magnetic field plot, the magnetic field plot of the sun's atmosphere. Quite chaotic is the sun's atmosphere. Next, we'll talk electrons. We don't see any charging hazards, even though we're just moving into warning levels here. Once again, there's the 1-year chart of the electron flux, courtesy Solar.info. And we're expecting an electron storm here. So this time I won't argue with Noah. And our patrons and those who follow us on Twitter and Facebook would have noticed yesterday that we got a NOAA alert for a geomagnetic storm, which I put the warning up and said, I don't think it's going to happen. And a couple hours later, NOAA retracted the warning. So it's nice being right. And yeah, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy and wise. We're waiting for the wealthy part. There's the, anyway, that's the forecast. We're expecting some significant electron storm here over the next 3 days. So we're just moving into the realm of over 1,000 pulse flux units, which is what this red line represents. That is where warning levels happen, and we see more charging hazards as a result. Here's a visualization of the total electron content. We see some minor anomalies there over the Antarctican continent, as well as a little bit over North America as well. Some GPS errors expected to be happening, especially around noontime. And here's just a diagram showing altitudes of things like the International Space Station and the SDO in miles. Here's a diagram of the atmosphere. Keep in mind this is in kilometers. And those red letters on the right side, F, E, E, and D, those are layers of the ionosphere. And the F layer is where the GOES 16 endeavors to make its measurements. It also shows you penetration of electromagnetic radiation from the sun into the atmosphere, where X-rays are adsorbed, where visible and infrared light are adsorbed, and the UV in between the electromagnetic spectrum range. Here's an animation of the ionosphere. And once again, it's looking a little bit anomalous here in the southern hemisphere. Nothing too extreme, no major charge-ups. Although some sudden charge downs happening there over the Indian Ocean, for example. Here's the latest image, this one coming in at pretty late here, 12:30 Universal Time. And let me just check the stream once again. And thanks again for leaving comments, precious slights. I'm interested in which volcanoes are erupting. Are you? Well, here's the list. Klyuchevskoy is exploding on the Kamchatka Peninsula, along with Shiveluch, producing 23,000 and 20,000 foot ash plumes. Please don't fly your hang glider over those frozen volcanic landscapes. Abiko's also erupting, flight level 070 there. Suwanosejima, flight level 040 over Suwanosejima. It's a 4,000 foot ash plume. Popocatépetl still exploding, along with Fuego, Revenador, and Sabancaya. Popocatépetl producing a 19,000 foot plume of ash. Fuego, 15,000 foot plume of ash. Revenador, 15,000 foot plume of ash. And the 24,000 foot ash plume over Sabancaya is nothing to pole vault. Please don't do so. Next, looking at pressure cells here. And we're going to show you a little bit of interesting weather patterns happening over the east coast of the U.S. as a flash freeze moves in. And AccuWeather failed hard yesterday with the report. We'll talk about it in a minute. So here's the GFS forecast. There's where we expect things to be tomorrow at noon, as that low pressure looks like it's moved due north. Next, we'll look at earthquakes. And the largest of the past 24 was actually a deep quake at the Philippines. It was a 6.3 magnitude. We'll get to it. So deep quakes here striking Fiji and Argentina. A deep quake at Japan and the Kuril Islands in between Japan and Kamchatka. Another deep quake at Japan. And those last two were only 10 minutes apart. Very deep quake at Fiji, a 4.2 magnitude at over 630 kilometers depth. And then about 20 minutes later, we see a deep quake at Indonesia. So a bit of a deep quake event there. And there's that 6.3 at the Philippines. It was at 109 kilometers. And we saw a follow-up deep quake here close by. There's a location of that. Looks like a pretty populated area. And let's go back to the list. That one came in at 23:43 on Christmas Eve. Santa was just about to get into his sleigh. Here's a 5.1 at the Philippines also. And that one happened about 2 hours later. It was even deeper at 111 kilometers, but only a 5.1 magnitude. Deep quake at Vanuatu. So it's a significant deep quake event here, folks. Also a deep quake at the Kermadec Islands. A deep quake at Chile. And another deep quake at Argentina, close by. Those were only separated by about 20 minutes. One of the most significant deep quake events we've reported. That is a lot of deep quakes. Let's see what's going on with the jet stream. Here is the jet stream scenario. For the Western world. And I totally saw what happened there. For that, I apologize. I'll show you the location of this deep 6.3 magnitude quake once again. There's a location of that. Pardon the test pattern, folks. There are the jet streams of the Western world, Eastern world rather. Here are the jet streams of the Western world. And check out the string of lightning. We see a 1,200-mile long string of lightning there in the Atlantic Ocean. That is a real-time lightning map, by the way. I like to use lightningmaps.org when I hear thunder. And it looks like the main activity is off the coast of Virginia Beach and the Outer Banks. Here's the GOES lightning mapper, and check out that string of lightning. That is quite impressive. Quite impressive indeed. So here's what's going on. Western Pennsylvania is getting a white Christmas. And Eastern Pennsylvania is getting a wet Christmas. AccuWeather forecasted that this rain would stop by 7 p.m., and it still hasn't stopped. Temperatures are anomalously high and about to become anomalously low. As we have this southerly flow, this flow from the south, pushing warm air up the East Coast. And there's a huge temperature gradient line right here, where the temperature goes from about 50 degrees to about 30 degrees. So here's the temperature anomaly on Tropical Tidbits. And you can see the entire eastern portion of the U.S. has major temperature anomalies here. So 12 degrees Celsius above normal in all of New Jersey, and 12 degrees Celsius below normal for most of the rest of the eastern portion of the country. see that cold air is going to especially strike western Kentucky and western North Carolina. And it's expected to stay cold through the weekend and then warm up. Looks like on Monday. Anomalously warm pressures over the central part of the country after that. Here's what's going on in the cloud layer. I'm using the NASA GOES shortwave radiation satellite map. And this cold air really taking its time to push through here as this southerly flow continues. And it's awfully warm outside right now and still raining. So we got major winds kicked up, and then they simmered down as this system is stagnating. And this dry air is actually rotating in a counterclockwise fashion. It's creating a weak low pressure behind it, and it has slowed down. And cold air dipping all the way down here into Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, etc. So again, here's the cloud layer. There's the water vapor map. Low clouds all over the Gulf of Mexico once again, as well as the northern Atlantic, from Bermuda up to Greenland. And let's do bonus features. Something we do regularly at the Smash News Network. We show you the colorized magnetogram and the intensitygram in high res to see the most current images of the local yellow dwarf. And thanks again for leaving comments. Precious lights and SSherp1232, do not spam us and try to sell us viewers. We don't purchase viewers. Precious Light says something going on in west of Africa. Yeah, saturating the ground and then freezing. The problem is, though, the warm temperatures, the heavy rains, and then the heavy winds. We don't want to see trees fall down on power lines. It's a bad thing to happen on Christmas. Yes, we do see the emojis. Thanks for leaving them, Precious Lights. Here's the colorized magnetogram. An extreme close-up, whoa, of sunspot 2794. And there's sunspot 2795. They've both remained fairly stable here since yesterday. And there is a close-up in intensitygram, great views of the penumbra. And those are some significant umbrae there associated with 2795. And if we see any major solar flares, expect them to come out of that group, as it's a beta class. We've got a South Pole umbra trailed by a North Pole umbra, and the interaction between those two is what you can expect to cause solar flares. Less likely to see anything major out of 2794. And we'll show you our final HelioViewer movies here. We're going to break out the 335 angstroms and animated close-ups of the magnetic fields and a close-up of those sunspots at 171 angstroms. Before we do that, the 193 angstroms view to show you the coronal hole that's right in the Earth-facing zone now, as well as the ones north of those sunspots. You won't be able to see the ones north of the sunspots very well, as there is a bunch of plasma suspended in that region. There's a great view of that coronal hole, just moving into the Earth-facing zone there. And we can expect some coronal hole wind stream from that in about 2.5 to 3 days. It's very Earth-facing. And here's a close-up of both sunspots in 171 angstroms. And you can see some minor flaring activity there, especially really out of both groups. And here's an extreme close-up of the same region in Magnetogram. And you can see they're both sunspot groups are remaining pretty stable here. Again, 2794, the leading one is alpha class, and 2795, despite being smaller umbra for umbra, much more likely to produce significant solar flares, and indeed possibly some coronal mass ejections. We'll keep an eye on it. And when I say ion, well, the pun is intentional. Once again, Merry Christmas, folks, from Smash staff and I. Thanks for tuning in. Please don't forget to press like and subscribe, share on your social media, tell your friends, foes, science noobs, and science pros. And since it'll never be now again, welcome to the Neo Renaissance. May that solar wind be at your back.